So in this video, I want to look at the benefits of economic growth. So let's start off with what is economic growth. Economic growth is increased real GDP, i.e. increased productivity in an economy. GDP is actually the total value of goods and services in an economy, and real GDP is the value excluding inflation rate. So it gives a more real figure. One of the benefits of having economic growth in an economy is that it has a clear positive correlation with quality of life. So what we can see is, for example, in 2008, Zimbabwe had a real GDP rate of minus 12.6%, and Switzerland had it of 1 or 2%, something along those lines. And this reflected in the quality of life index. Switzerland came 24th and Zimbabwe came 48th, basically, doubled, so worse off. So we can see there's a clear correlation, and every government tries to ensure that their citizens has a good quality of life. That's why one of their key macroeconomic objectives is to ensure that there is stable economic growth. Another thing is there's more allocative efficiency. Now that is a fancy term for the choice of goods and services available to consumers. Now this is a factor of quality of life, because to have variety of items, to have variety of food, continental, to have peppers, dragon fruits, lychees, mangoes, all variety of fruit rather than just have apples and pears, that is sure to increase your quality of life because you have more variety. So, and the reason why economic growth allows increased allocative efficiency is because when we have economic growth, there's more productivity. That means that more things are produced and there is a more wider range of goods and services produced. So that's another reason why we benefit from economic growth. It also is good in terms of competition and international trade. Firstly, on a national level, by having economic growth, there are more businesses in an economy, more people offering goods and services. This keeps competition high, prices low, which is great for consumers. But then, as well as being competitive, if a place is competitive nationally, it will be internationally too. Because internationally, if someone has got booming growth, then it's competition, because a lot of the buyers or investors, everyone's going to come to that country, and it's like an economic injection. It's not a leakage. Businesses aren't withdrawing to go to Australia, let's say. So it's good competition, and firms love it. Why do firms love it? Because it's increased profit. They can make more money, they can expand, they can do so many things with their businesses, they can take it to a global level. So it's great for firms. They make more money, and the government, this is something that we never remember, but if the firms are doing well, consumers are doing well, then that means they'll be able to take tax. There's probably going to be less benefit, and that's more revenue for the government. This means they can do more to increase our environment, sort of increase the quality of healthcare, education, those kind of things. Defense, they can make our place great because they have more tax revenue money coming in. And obviously overseas investment, if a place is booming, like with 1 or 2% GDP, it's a better place to invest in than a place with minus 12.6% GDP, because you wonder why is it so low in the first place, and a lot of businesses will get attracted there. So it's great, you get overseas, and that is an economic injection, as I mentioned before. So obviously now there's two ways we can achieve this economic growth. We can either take demand side policy, so i.e. monetary policy, fiscal policy, or we can use supply side policies to increase aggregate supply. Now, out of the four government macroeconomic objectives, we know that one is economic growth. So now let's look at the implications of increased economic growth on the other three macroeconomic objectives. So first is inflation. So if we get economic growth through an increase in aggregate demand, then inflation will speed up and increase, and probably demand side policies such as interest rates will have to be manipulated to control this, because inflation is the biggest problem for governments. It can lead to a negative spiral of decline. It's not good. Whereas if we had economic growth through increased productivity, as the name said, not because or the demand is increased, so that means aggregate supply shifts that way. Inflation is kept lower, which is what we want. We want the value of the currency to remain or increase. We don't want it to fall. So it's great if aggregate supply increases, especially because it gives that potential for aggregate demand. They both go hand in hand, you know. You need AS to increase in order for AD to actually have some space, you know, to sort of increase. Then employment, whether it be aggregate supply or aggregate demand, which increases to produces economic growth, employment goes up, because if it's because of demand increases, therefore firms are producing more or we're importing more, then there's more jobs involved to make those goods. And you know, where has this demand come from? Probably because more people are in jobs, they got the money to spend it. Balance of payments, the current account. So if aggregate demand increases, we usually will see economic growth because we will increase our productivity, but not so much as in if AS shifts. So we'll probably end up importing more. So if aggregate demand increases, then balance of payments we're more likely to worsen our deficit. Whereas if AS increases, we've actually increased our productivity. You know, we've got there, we're making more cars or whatever it is, and you know, we can sort of take small steps in order to make our balance of payments current account position better, or as the government says, satisfactory position. But what I want to say is that governments always try to keep their economic growth at 2%, because if it's any higher, then the economy can basically overheat, and that's not what we want, you know, because if it's overheating, then it can lead to inflation and just a range of problems that government doesn't want to get into. And if it's too low, as we've seen with the recession, the economy starts, you know, it becomes stagnant. It just starts to smell, basically. So we want you know, a nice ideal 2%. Like for inflation, we have 2% as well. But one thing is there, like when Britain was growing, from what I can understand, when Labour was in power, they paid off a bit of the budget deficit, but not necessarily. They continued spending, you know, the increased tax revenues and all they got. And to increase, you know, we were running out so many years for 2.9% GDP. It's a great rate. But what I want to question is that why do economies, once they've reached 2%, even 2.5%, why are we all trying to push ourselves to increase more and more? You know, it's only an economy's limited size. You should keep it in a controlled way. We don't want it to expand too much. And I think the government needs to put more regulations, like Mr. Obama has done. He's regulating the banks or whatever. It's good, but I think, you know, when we are in boom time, I think somebody needs to remind the Chancellor of the Exchequer and our new Prime Minister, who we'll find out tonight, that pay off the deficit, work on maintaining a 2% or 2.5% economic growth. If it goes to 2.9%, it's great, you know, great, but other places are probably doing much higher, 3%. But reduce it and keep it at 2%. So that our trade cycle looks like this rather than like this, you know, goes up and down and fluctuates. It's much better, and that's my personal opinion, and I think people should really take this seriously. So I hope you've enjoyed watching. Please visit my blog, kdkchatter.blogspot.com. Thank you for watching.